getting a show on air takes a really long time regardless. And is I think Tim would agree is not one journey but multiple journeys melded together.
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, I think for Elliot, it's been 5 years. Am I accurate in that? And for me, three, I think, somewhere around that. I joined.
Welcome to Screenwriters Talk Screenwriting with your hosts, Jordan Emiola, Elena Dizon, and David Wingert.
Screenwriters talk screenwriting, screenwriters talk screenwriting, screenwriters talk screenwriting, screenwriters talk screenwriting.
Welcome again to Screenwriters Talk Screenwriting. Today we have two creators, writers, and executive producers of the new action-packed police drama On Call, Tim Walsh and Elliot Wolf. Tim and Elliot, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So first question, individually, I guess, Tim, I'll go with you first. What made you want to write and create?
Great question. I don't think I was programmed to do anything else in this life, quite honestly. I was very fortunate to know what I wanted to do by the time I was like around 6 years old, when my mom started showing me like monster movies, the old Universal monster films. And I was captured by that right away. Like I just absorbed movies and TV differently than my friends growing up. So it took a little bit of a rough path getting here, but I was bitten by the bug at a very young age, to answer your question.
Same. I have been making up stories in my head for legitimately as long as I can remember, walking around, and I have a deep passion for making things and sharing things with people and being able to um, honestly enjoy seeing people react positively or negatively to things I create. So Tim can probably attest, even if it's, something that's half written, I want to share it with everyone, and that I've had that bug since day one as well.
Wow, that's totally amazing. And how long have you guys been working on the show? Like, how did the idea for On Call come about? What was that process like?
That question begins with Elliot.
It's been about a 5 year process, give or take, from initial pitch to being on air, which was delayed by some forces outside of our control. We shut down during the writer's strike. There was some, development delays and so forth that I would consider outside the norm for a development process. But getting a show on air takes a really long time regardless. And is I think Tim would agree is not one journey but multiple journeys melded together.
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, I think for Elliot, it's been 5 years. Am I accurate in that? And for me, three, I think, somewhere around that. I joined somewhere. You should ask Elliot why I wasn't his first choice.
Okay,
That's what
we'll do that.
that's what
Elliot,
you should
why was
ask
that not your
him.
first choice?
Maybe it wouldn't have taken him 5 years if I was his first choice.
Yeah.
Let me turn the tables here a little bit.
Well, Tim and I didn't know each other before this series. So the original idea for the series was actually a short form series, 10-minute episodes that were individual calls. And going way back to the times of Quibi had a two screen experience where if you held your phone vertically, you could not only get a different aspect ratio of what you're watching, but an entirely different shot. Most shows on Quibi were not exercising that technology to its full extent. They were just cutting the shots differently so that you had a vertical or traditional aspect ratio, depending on how you held your phone, of the same shot. I had pitched this idea of doing a show in which if you held your phone vertically, you were always in body camera. Now, in execution, having shot body camera for on call, that would have been very, very difficult. So I'm glad that did not happen. Luckily, sort of saw the writing on the wall of the way that the industry was going and rejiggered the pitch to be a half-hour series. And that pitch really revolves around less so our A story for the season and more so the idea of bringing back the half-hour procedural. You look at the 1950s, 1960 primetime schedule, it's pretty much all half-hour procedurals, sorry. And they don't exist in the marketplace today. And there's, I would say, an increasing value on someone's attention. So offering a shorter format to tell what is, I think, a tried and true favorite of at least American audiences in the crime procedural felt like a no-brainer. And then started developing that. I'd never show ran a room or created a show before. Tim has a ton of experience in that realm. So we actually hopped on a Zoom and sort of I would say immediately kicked it off. I don't know. Tim might be like, it took me a couple.
Yeah, for sure. I say it all the time. You know, Elliot left me with a question, which was who would want to be a police officer in 2022? I think it was 2022 back then when we first met. And that was a fascinating question. It just rung a bell inside me. And that just, you didn't need to build too much drama around that person who gets up in today's, you know, turbulent times and puts the uniform on and does the job. To me, that was endless drama. Without getting into any of the corruption and all that stuff, like we kind of stayed out of that. We wanted to tell the other side of it. Felt like other shows in the media were really only telling that part of it. And there are still really good police officers out there, thankfully, who get up and do this job and protect us and protect their communities. And we wanted to tell that story. And that was a fascinating opportunity for me. And I jumped at it.
Yeah, I really like that response a lot. And I like that you brought up the format of almost like a phone camera or body cam for the aesthetic for a lot of the show. And that's really something that came to mind for a lot of even in episode 1. I mean, like right from the very beginning, we see like when Delgado gets shot, there's like the people across the street like filming with their camera, or like we see even like the body cams coming into play in the first episode, like right off the bat. I'm just curious, was that as a plot device, was like the use of body cams and phones in the plot something that you always knew was going to be a big deciding factor for a lot of these turns in the story, or did it come more as like something that almost felt like a necessity? Because obviously like 5 or 6 years ago, we wouldn't have body cams quite as much. So did that come kind of organically, or was that something that you just knew you had to do?
It was always part of the pitch.
Okay.
So we call it out at the top of the pilot script. We don't prescribe necessarily where we use it in scripting, unless there's a story element to the use. So as an example, in the pilot, when Harmon is caught on Diaz's body camera, that was scripted, but there was a lot of touch and go with the directors to figure out the right formula or guardrails for how we cut to and use the found footage, which, you know, I think we always say there are no rules, so those guardrails are meant to be broken per se. But I would say, to the point of it being part of the pitch, it is in the DNA of the show. Ultimately, the show doesn't work if there's not great characters and story around those characters. But the pitch for the found footage was that there's no more relatable lens in the world today than the iPhone. I would argue that the average person has seen body cam scenarios play out in real life now, whether that be on the news or online. For us, it was just another tool to make this series feel more visceral, with the goal of you sort of feeling like you're taking a ride along with these officers.
I'd also add, you know, in the writer's room, we would try to use those lenses to push it cinematically and to do something more creative. You know, that was one of the things we wanted to do with the show, to set it apart from the network shows, which are awesome in their own right, but we just wanted to be different. And all of those lenses offered us an opportunity, I think, to push it in a more cinematic way. And it was trial and error. You know, we would do long takes in body cam, and you get into editing and you realize you're going to make everybody sick, you know, and we absolutely don't want that. So we found a lot of the formula, and we're still finding it, but we found a lot of it in editing.
And Elliot, kind of going back to what you said, like I love how it's a half-hour format. Like I kind of forgot shows were like that back in the day. And you do so much in a half hour. Like there's so much action in a half hour. There's always always an intense scene. Like the dog scene yesterday. I was watching the dog scene yesterday, and I was like, oh, this is like I couldn't watch it with my dog. I had to like put my dog in another room. But is there because you have to do so much in a half hour, which is great. Like I love. I watched 5 episodes in a row and I felt so accomplished. I'm like, yeah, I watched five. It would take me usually 5 hours. It took me 2.5. But is there like a checklist you have that you want to do for every episode? Like put like an argument maybe between the two main characters. Like, is there a checklist you want to do in every half hour or every episode, or do you kind of just lay out all 8 episodes and kind of?
I'd say no checklist. I think our only rule was to have no rules. We want you to expect the unexpected. Um, from a storytelling standpoint, it always comes back to the characters and the dynamics. So for us, the one-off calls were really means of putting our characters in situations that felt in some capacity morally complex to the dog scene. And our goal is that, you're watching with a friend, you might walk away from any given episode having different opinions on how something was handled, and that's straight conversation. We're not trying to impart our point of view so much as set the table for people to assess the situation from theirs. And the storytelling itself, definitely more challenging in the half-hour format. Very lucky to work with Tim, one most talented writer I know, and being able to just pack so much in. The thing from Dick always was make you feel like you're shot out of a cannon every episode. There's a lot left on the cutting room floor.
That's incredible. I do want to touch upon the part where you said that almost each episode, or I guess each event that happens in the show, it opens up a conversation. People will have different opinions. Is there any particular key themes or messages you would like to convey in this show that you've so brilliantly created?
I mean, I can say theme. We treated theme as a bad word in the room. I think writers get trapped by theme a lot, and we purposely stayed away from it. We definitely didn't want you want to paint a picture, step away, and let the audience interpret it any way they want, and keep it open. And I think that's what Elliot's saying. And I think Elliot did a great job of reminding us that all the time. If I would push it one way politically, it'd be like we'd always pull it back. Let's keep it open. 95% of the calls that our characters you see experience in the show were ones that we experienced, in order to write on the show, you had to go work with the cops. Our directors worked with them, did ride-alongs rather. DPs, producers, every writer did multiple ride-alongs with the sheriff's department, Long Beach, LAPD, and that dog one was a real call that I went on. They didn't shoot the dog, but it was a hit and run, and we rolled up and the dog was dead. And my officer told me that just prior, they had a call where animal control was gone. They weren't responding, or they were tied up, and the animal was in extreme pain, and they had to put it out. So yeah, we approached it as apolitically as we possibly could, so that people could come into it unencumbered and have their own opinions, rather than us shoving our own opinions and our own ideologies onto them.
With speaking about your process with the writers' room and just writing together, even just as a writing pair, I know a lot of the fans of this podcast are young aspiring writers who are kind of like aspiring to be in a writer's room someday. So I'm curious if you could speak more to your experience with that. Just like, how was your time working together, and how's your time working with the additional writers on other episodes? Like, what was the turnaround time? How much involvement was there between each of the writers for each episode? Just what was your experience with that?
Yeah, so we had a really small room. I think there was only 5 of us, which is kind of ideal, just because there's only 8 half-hour episodes. So we want to keep it contained. Each writer got two episodes. I think outside of the staff writer maybe had 1. I don't recall the turnaround time, but it was an incredible experience. I've been in rooms that were really toxic. We had absolutely none of that. everybody had a voice. I don't care who you are, quite honestly. If you're in the room, you're an assistant, like I want to hear from you. I really don't care your rank. You keep your rank at the, leave it at the door. None of that impresses me. What impresses me is your life experience and what you can bring to this story. And so I'm open-minded to ideas from anywhere. So it was a very friendly, open room. I don't know, Elliot, what do you think? What am I
That's
missing?
all right. In terms of process, it was a 20-week room. You come in and you spend the first couple weeks breaking the season. Tim and I made a very conscious effort to come in with a very strong sense of what we wanted the season to be, which I think would be a recommendation for anyone coming into a room. It just sets you up for success. And from there, you start to break episodes. And the way that we did it was there's always a room going, but as you were writing your episode, you would break away from the room. And then be able to come back and sit with the team and talk through anything that was becoming an issue, whether that be an outline or script. So a very collaborative process, but the first couple of weeks you're really sitting as a group, and then people are rotating out as they go to write script.
I also will add uniquely, like we broke this as a like an 8-part movie in 2 chapters. If you watch the series, it's sort of chapter 1 is episodes 1 through 4. I don't want to spoil it for people. I feel like I'm just about to spoil it. And then 4 through 8 is the second chapter, sort of the repercussions of what they did in the first 4. So that's a little bit more unique. We never did that on Chicago PD. I did the first 4 seasons of PD. You're breaking individual episodes. You start with a crime and you solve a crime. That's one of the things we never did. So we're not a traditional procedural. I understand why people call us that because it's simple, but we're really not a procedural at all. Like we don't start with a crime and solve it by the end. But that was unique in and of itself to this room. We kind of broke it as a little bit of a movie and in 2 chapters.
Yeah, I definitely did not feel procedural to me. I felt for these 2 characters and I wanted to follow them throughout the whole thing. And the very first scene of the whole series with Officer Delgado being shot, was that the first scene you 2 wrote, or did that come about in the writer's room?
No, Elliot and I wrote the first 2 scripts together before we started the writer's room. And to double back on something, he said, like every show that I've been on that has failed, it's because the showrunner has come in and blue skied it with the room. Like, hey, what do you guys want to do today? What do you want the show to be? It's like you're the captain of the ship. Like you have to come in with a blueprint and you got to say, this is where we're going and you have to follow me this way. Otherwise, every other experience I've had where that isn't the case, the show has gone off the rails. So we came in, we had 2 scripts and we had a pretty detailed board on where we were going. And then we have an incredible staff. Our staff is phenomenal, and they came in and helped us build it.
I mean, just double clicking on that opening scene, for us, it always came back to the idea of expecting the unexpected. Huge fan of Monica, has been in the Wolf universe, obviously in Chicago Fire. We really wanted the audience to believe that she was going to be a lead or meaningful actress in this series. And to start with a bang like that was us signaling the audience, whatever you think might happen isn't going to happen.
Yeah, that totally worked, because I was like, oh, we're going to follow this person forever. And then nope.
It was a little bit of our nod to Hitchcock and Janet Leigh. Obviously not nearly as long. She's not in it as long. Janet Leigh's in probably a quarter of the movie Psycho, and then she gets killed. But I mean, Hitchcock created that. He did that. We're just ripping off from the best.
It definitely worked. It hooked us in and like never let us go after that.
You both mentioned earlier about just the research going into this project, especially just going on ride-alongs with the police. I was curious if you could speak more to that, especially just with it fascinated me that this took place in Long Beach. That's just not like the first place I would expect for a cop show to take place. But that's what I really liked about it. It was very unexpected to me. And I was curious if you could just speak more to just your experience of what that learning curve was like. Tim, I know you mentioned you've written previously on other cop-related shows. Did that did that knowledge transition easily into this, or was that a difficult thing for you to do?
No, I've always treated writing like a journal. I always taken a journalistic approach. Like if you're writing something, you should become as much of an expert on it as you possibly can. You shouldn't just make it up or just do a Google search. So I've always gotten in the car, I've served warrants, I've gone on raids and stuff like that. But what was great about this and working in Long Beach is you're not only observing the cops, you're observing the community and how the community interacts with the police. So that was a bit of an eye-opening thing, because I don't know if I paid too much attention to that prior to the show, but we definitely wanted that to be an element. But I don't know if there wasn't anything harder. All my other time on other cop shows, it really helped with this, quite honestly. A little bit of different language, that these departments use, and Long Beach Police is different than LAPD or the sheriffs. They have different radio codes, but we have great tech advisors on staff that we use. But it wasn't that much of a hard adjustment, quite honestly, from the other shows I've been on.
Wow, that's great. And I'm sure with your experience, you've pretty much formatted something that's kind of like a well-oiled machine in regards to production. If there's any challenges or obstacles that you guys ran into during production, can you mention any of them? We'd love to hear it.
The writer's strike is one of them.
What happened?
Do you remember that little thing?
We were 3 weeks into production when that happened. So we had just started to catch a flow, if you will. And I think it's really first and foremost a testament to our actors. We shut down halfway through episode 3, and there's a moment, if you're watching, where we cut in the middle of a scene, and little would you know, it's almost a year later. And that is, to, I think, the naked eye, seamless. And it's really unbelievable on their part that they were able to just pick up and run with where we left off. So kudos to them. And then the other thing I would call out, which I think is unique about the show, is we shot it entirely on location. We had no sets. Even the police department that we shot in was a real police department. So it was challenging in being on the move, and it's really a testament to the crew. We had an amazing crew on this one who was not only on the move, but very much down to experiment with us with the body cam stuff and dash cam and figuring out how to get it right. But it's a challenge. And I think that it also pays off on the screen. And Long Beach was unbelievably helpful in letting us shoot there. But, I think that the show, that gritty realism that so many people give credit solely to the found footage approach, is definitively in part the fact that we shot this thing on the streets of Long Beach.
Wow, that's incredible. Having the actual police state, everything's on location. You just blew my mind just now. I apologize for my scatterbrain right now. But so if it was all on location, does that mean that police station was actively working? Like, were you seeing live people coming in with and having reports?
All the time.
What was that like? Wow.
All the time. It was Seal Beach.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it is pretty quiet. Seal Beach, right, Elliot? Yeah, which is fairly quiet. But no, it was active for sure, and we were there late nights and during the day, and I don't know, it just sort of became like background to us, right? It really, nobody batted an eye at the fact that this guy's bringing in a suspect to grill, in the box. It just became like part of the show, I guess.
No, they were super helpful. I just wanted to clarify, the actual police coming and going were not on camera, but we were there while they were there.
Yeah.
Got it.
But they were really, really supportive and
They were
so
awesome.
they were great. And yeah, we did have our crew is unmatched. They were up to the challenge. You know, we're very proud of the fact that I think we fostered a really fun, compassionate environment for everybody to, you know, be heard and flex their creative wings. We really wanted people to come in and you know, I saw this as perhaps maybe my last opportunity. I've had a few pretty big at bats that have failed, and I didn't know if I was getting another opportunity to do this again. And so, if we were going to fall on a sword, we were going to fall on our own sword. And we very proud that, you know, we don't. I'm trying to get back to your question of if we had any real drama like during production. We didn't, and we made sure we kind of didn't. You know, we surrounded ourselves with really good people, and we treated everybody as they should be treated, which is really well.
How many months or weeks besides the writer strike in the middle of it? How many months was production?
3? Was it 2 or 3?
Little
Yeah,
over three.
yeah, a little over 3 months.
And then can you, if you can't, it's okay, but can you tell us where you're at with season 2? Did you start season 2 yet?
I was hoping you could tell us about season 2. Do we have the green light? Are you here to tell us we have the green light for season 2?
No, we're still waiting.
Yeah, we're waiting. We're
It's-
waiting. The show has done very well.
Yeah.
We're a little surprised we're not, you know, further along, but we're waiting.
Yeah. You're still in the top 10 on Amazon, like and I think it's been a month, but it's still up
Yeah.
there.
We're fairly positive we'll continue to do this.
The great thing about why I think this could have such a long shelf life with multiple seasons is you guys do such a good job of giving all these characters backstories that feel believable with like family and friends and just their own personal lives. But what amazed me about that is like we're never not on call with these people, right? They're always on the job, either making arrests, and if they're at somebody's house, it's at the house of someone who's a suspect. We never actually see them in their homes or just in their daily lives, which amazed me how you guys still manage to like we get to meet Harmon's sister or Diaz's brother, and just like so I guess my question in there is how did you guys manage to find these ways to kind of get around the fact that we're always on call with them to kind of flesh out these people as characters so we know more about them outside of just their life on the job?
You know, we just kept telling each other we have to do more with less, you know, and simple, keep it simple, you know, simplify everything. Like where we would get into trouble is when we would try to do too much plot. You know, just keep it very, very simple and make the simple as interesting as you possibly can. Make the character stuff impactful. There's a lot of personal stuff in these characters from all of us in the room. We all come, you know, it's a pretty eclectic group of people, you know, from all corners and pockets of life. And, you know, we all have a piece of ourselves in these characters. But yeah, to answer your question, we would always just come back to more with less. You got to do more with less, and keep it interesting.
Wow, that's great. So as you know, we're on a podcast, and so a lot of our followers are either just tiptoeing and some are veterans, but we've been throwing this term around showrunner around sometimes, and I'm just wondering if you can explain what a showrunner does and what their part is in a production of a show.
You know, I'll use a sports analogy because I'm a huge NFL guy. It's a little bit like a head coach, and you're in charge of, you know, every facet for the most part. You know, you're in charge of every coach underneath you and staff and all that. I was very fortunate to have a really good partner creatively in Elliot, as my co-creator and co-captain. But yeah, you're really, you know, you're the first to go if the show doesn't succeed, you know. So with that in mind, you have to fight for what you believe in. There's no question about that. You cannot cave when, you know, if you feel strongly and you trust your instincts, you need to stick with your instincts, because if I'm going to fail, I'm okay failing by that way, that I listen to myself and I failed. That's okay. But I've also done this before where I've sold things to streamers, and then I've listened to all of their notes and I've taken all of their notes, and then they get the script and they're like, well, you know what? This isn't what we wanted. And it's like, this is exactly what you wanted. So a showrunner, you know, I'm trying to answer the question. Showrunner is in charge of everything for the most part. You know, you're the first to go, you know, if it doesn't work. But you have to listen to your instincts at all times. You have to be secure in your beliefs creatively, and stick with it. Does that answer the question of what a showrunner is? I'm not sure I answered that well.
Head coach copy.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's kind of the best analogy I can use, you know.
It's wonderful. No, I think
Yeah.
it's great. It's other than the literal term show running, I think it describes a whole lot more by putting it in an NFL analogy like that. So thank you so much. And I have quite a few friends that I would fast forward to this podcast to your specific answer. And even I was motivated as you were saying that. So thank you so much for that. Thank you.
I'm glad that made sense.
100%.
Yeah, it definitely did. And again, this next question too is kind of more for like, we have a lot of new writers listen to the podcast. And I'm always curious, and I kind of want to hear like individually, any advice you have for up and coming writers? We'll start, Elliot, we'll start with you.
Stick with it. And it is a very tough business that I think can definitively make you doubt your own writing. And ultimately, it's a game of repetition and practice, like anything else, 10,000 hours, and trust in your gut. As soon as you lose trust in your own gut, it's going to be very hard to get the words on the page.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I would add, you know, you have to put the work into it. Not to keep going back on sports analogies, but you do have to kind of look at yourself as an athlete. You know, athletes get up, basketball players get up and shoot, you know, 300 free throws every morning. You got to get up. You have to read. You have to study the craft. You have to continuously keep reading scripts of other writers that you respect and movies that you watch that you like. You have to keep writing. You know, and get out there and talk to people that are in the field that you're writing about, so you can, you know, there's some authenticity to it. But really, bottom line is put the work in, and really the cheat code to this is exercise. If you can physically exercise, it's night and day for your brain. I mean, there's science out there that proves this, but it seems, you know, it doesn't seem like it jives with what we do. You know, sit down and write. But I mean, I barely write at a desk anymore. I usually do my best writing on long walks. I take very long walks where I'm at, and I have my phone app, and I just write as I walk, and then I go back and transcribe it. So like physical movement is your best friend as a writer.
Do you have like a walking routine? Is it like every morning or every night?
You know, when I take my dogs for walks every morning, and then if I'm really just stuck, you know, writing, I'll just get up and I'll just go for a walk. You know, randomly. It's not necessarily at 3 o'clock I got to stop and go for a walk, but I'll know it. You know what I mean? And you guys have experienced too. You're all writers, you know, where you're just log jammed on some idea and you can't see past something. You know, there's 10 different ways to tell a story, and you have to be open to every single one of them. You can't be closed off to any one of those ideas, you know, or paths, so to speak. And for whatever reason, whenever I go out and I move, it loosens. Like your brain is like a fist, and it kind of like opens up whenever I go out and move around.
It's so funny you say that, because I feel like that's a common thing I hear with a lot of writers, especially because I remember when the writer strike happened. There's like a biking trail that I usually walk on, and the day after the strike began, there was like 50 new people walking on that street with like writer strike or WGA shirts. I'm like, here's all the writers just out for walks after the strike began. But
I will add, you know, if you're physically unable to do that, then are you able to meditate or exercise your brain in other ways with reading and like I say, mindfulness exercises, meditation. It's kind of, you're all working sort of the same muscle, and I'm telling you, it is our cheat code. I'm not here without it, quite honestly.
With advice like this, I mean, obviously you guys have like learned a lot of this from experience, but do you guys, this is kind of a question for both of you, but do you have any mentors in your life, either from this project or from previous projects, that you constantly find yourself like, kind of like the way we're hearing from you guys now, all this great advice? Like, do you guys have someone that you go to whenever you're just stumped, whether it's on writing or just anything?
Elliot, you want me to go first?
Go first, yeah.
I have a handful of, I've been doing this for a while. I got my big break. I came out to LA in 2000. Took me 10 and a half years to break in. I got my break in 2011. So I've amassed, a small amount of people I really, really trust. And there's some showrunners that have made me better writers. Matt Olmstead is one of them. I go back to him all the time. Gary Lennon, who does, the on Stars, the Power spinoffs. There's some Mike Weiss too, who's doing the FBI show. There's a handful of really, really creative types that I lean on, that I've met over the years. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I've had the benefit of growing up in and around the industry. So a ton of folks of the older generation who I look up to, and then folks who I met day one in the industry too. I think it's sort of important to have both, in the sense that you have mentors who you can learn from through their experience, and then people who are experiencing similar things to you at the same time, albeit whether that be screenwriting or directing or as an executive. I think it's important to balance that a little bit, because what I found is the entertainment industry is this weird sort of contrast between what people want to glamorize in old Hollywood and a very traditional approach, and in reality, an industry that's ever changing and never going backwards. So I think that there's an element of honoring time old tradition and how you get something made and so forth. And then also an element of breaking the templates. And I think On Call is to a certain extent that, right? In the sense of like bringing back an old format and making it something completely new. So just balancing the perspective between folks, ideally who are younger than you too, and coming into the industry that you really respect as a human being and their intelligence. Just a varied approach, I guess, would be my answer.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I want to commend you on giving us a show that puts a fresh spin on the generic, not general cop dramas. It's definitely a fresh take. For those that are, you mentioned something, having a big break as a writer. Do you have any ideas or advice to someone with a script, with a TV idea? What's the best? It could be an appropriate way. It could be in general. What's the best way to approach it to a network executive?
You got to get to that executive first. You know what I mean? You got to figure out the path, and that's not easy. So you have to probably find some form of representation. And that's not easy either. But nothing is easy. This business has never been easy for me. So I mean, I know people will say it's so hard right now, and it's hard, and it's been hard for me forever. I mean, I don't know when it's not been hard. So that should never deter you. The fact that anybody says that something's hard, that shouldn't deter you from anything. You should be the judge of that. So just to get back to your question, I just think the practical approach would be you probably need somebody to knock on that door for you. You probably need representation, and you just need to find somebody out there who believes in your skills, and hopefully they're hungry like you are, and they'll make the calls on your behalf. There really isn't any other magical formula than that. But if you have that idea, you said you have a TV idea, you have to write it. That's the first thing. You have to give yourself at least a chance, and giving yourself a chance is putting it on paper. After that, if it's good enough, it'll find someone to get to the network exec. It'll find its way there.
Yeah, I would say more generally when pitching too, once you have that representation, once you get in the door, lead with character. There's so many people who will come in and pitch a world and so forth, and some variation of every world has been pitched. You're going to succeed by selling people on a really compelling character and dynamics between a set of characters, the relationships and so forth, because ultimately that's where I think we find human connection and storytelling and relatability.
That's awesome advice. I feel like that this On Call too is an example of that. Like the two main characters, their relationship, how it works. That's what draws us in and keeps us going. So yeah, it was awesome. So thank you so much for your time. We have one last question. It's kind of got two parts to it, but I want to keep it on we want to end on a fun question. What is your favorite TV show of all time, and what are you watching now? Whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead, Elliot, if you want.
Favorite TV show of all time. There's a few, but I'd probably say Breaking Bad. I just think the way that they were able to build an empire and then beautifully take a wrecking ball to it in a very humane way. I also think I will probably be proven wrong here, but the first series that was like a true antagonist as our protagonist in a way that the anti-hero, which is the term in Hollywood, that really influenced so many shows after it. But the arc of that series from start to finish was just, I think, unbelievably well executed. Today, I feel like everybody else, I'm watching Severance and I'm watching White Lotus.
Nice.
Well, I'm going to answer your two-part question with perhaps two parts. I'm going to throw you for a really big loop. My all-time favorite TV show is Three's Company. You guys remember Three's Company?
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
who doesn't like Jack Tripper? I mean, like I grew up on that, and to this day, I still watch it religiously. It's like clearing the deck for me. I know that I don't mean to sound as silly as it does sound, but it is. It's my all-time favorite show, if I'm being accurate. The most influential show on my career was The Shield, the Sean Ryan show that came out with Michael Chiklis. That got me to want to write television. What an incredible show that was, and it really kind of changed the landscape of TV. I don't watch a lot of TV, to be honest with you, because you're in the room all day, you're thinking of plot points and this and that, and then when I go and turn on another show, all I'm doing is like trying to deconstruct what they did. So I watch a lot of old movies. I'm a big John Carpenter fan. I just rewatched They Live last night. Escape from New York, all that. But I don't watch a lot of TV.
I have a follow-up question to that then. Do you have something that you like to do to kind of like shut off that part of your brain at the end of the day where you just like go home, it's like, all right, I want to relax, but I do not want to watch anything? Like, do you have something that you go to for that?
I meditate quite a bit. I do meditate. Yeah. So it's something I picked up during the pandemic. I dealt with a lot of anxiety my whole life, and was never quite sure how to get a handle on it until I discovered meditation. And if I really want to shut it off, I'll meditate.
Awesome.
Sorry, that's not a really fun answer, but it's really what I do. Yeah. Not the funnest answer.
Three's Company, that was a pretty fun answer. I did not expect.
Okay, good. At least I score on that one. I'm not a total stick in the mud, am I?
Yeah, it makes me want to watch. I haven't seen it in like a decade, but it makes me want to watch.
Oh, come on, man. Go watch it.
I know. I might watch that tonight. Well, thank you so much for your time, Tim and Elliot. We look forward to season 2. I'm sure it'll be picked up soon. So we can't wait to watch it again, hopefully soon. So
thank you for having us. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Screenwriters Talk Screenwriting. Subscribe, rate, and review for more episodes.
You can now follow Screenwriters Talk Screenwriting on YouTube and Instagram at Screenwriters Talk Screenwriting. Now, here's the joke of the podcast. Why wouldn't the police officer come out from under the covers? They were arresting. Not all these jokes are good, you guys.